As 2026 ushered in horror features Fast and Furious, KK was still going through some movies from the class of 2025, with some released near the tail end of the year. This review will encompass 3 movies of totally unassociated context, as much as I wanted to coerce something out of nothing. We'll start with Dust Bunny from writer-director Bryan Fuller. 8-year-old Aurora was convinced that there was a monster living under the floorboard of her room. A foster child who was loved by her foster parents, this monster that left Aurora unhurt would devour everyone who was associated with her. Feeling exasperated by the serial loss of her loved ones to a mysterious bloodthirsty monster, Aurora will try to find a suitable slayer of a monster with her unnamed neighbor from Unit 5B as the prime target. This neighbor in fact was a dexterous hitman whom Aurora had witnessed him slaughtering a gang of Chinatown Triad members who disguised as part of a traditional dragon dance, something young Aurora had never seen before, therefore believed that he was a monster slayer. The icy facade of the hitman was slowly melted away through the continual interactions with the precocious Aurora. He still felt too incredulous to believe in the story of the monster under the floor of Aurora's house. With his incognito status being threatened, the hitman's employer tried to ensure his friendship with Aurora would end before it began. Meanwhile, some other threats also crept out of the woodworks. Of course, there was something terrifying that was creeping within the woodworks literally, and shenanigans ensued when the fantastical persona came for the blood of the clusterfuck in the small apartment. To be honest, the movie harbored very little horror elements. Even the jump scares, if there is any classified to be, were very conveniently telegraphed. Even 10 minutes in, I was thinking to myself, when did Wes Anderson make a John Wick movie which also tell a story in the Where the Wild Things Are universe? Bryan Fuller just took elements of source materials that generally will be weird melding together, and end product was weird as well, not even whimsical or quirky if that was his intention. People online will compare Dust Bunny to Leon the Professional. I believe even Luc Besson, who made movies like Fifth Element, will find a furry monster from a Jim Henson's workshop a bit far-fetched for him. I could not help myself but to be smitten with this Wes Anderson influenced world, like how those Paddington Bear movies could exist in the same world Bryan Fuller had created here. Fuller created a version of New York City where the Tenenbaums would strive in, listening to some under-the-radar tunes from Simon and Garfunkel or watching some 1970s European independent movies, while strange hitmen standing out too prominently even in this crazy fictitious world, with David Dastmalchian character simply known as the conspicuously inconspicuous man. There was a very Chinese-influenced sensibility, perhaps the close proximity to a Chinatown, but could also give us clue that Fuller had been given some funding from some China-based backers. The weapon that Sigourney Weaver's character unleashed was something to be behold, and it felt like the actors in this movie had a lot of fun. The name Bryan Fuller is synonymous with many Star Trek TV series like Voyager and Deep Space Nine. Besides telling stories about the adventure of the Starfleet, he was also the showrunner for ABC's Pushing Daisy and more recently Star's American Gods, based off the novel from Neil Gaiman. Both TV series bore modern fantastical elements that will match up with the sensibility of Dust Bunny. Fuller also created the TV series Hannibal about the relationship between FBI agent Will Graham and the serial killer Dr. Hannibal Lecter, based off the successful crime thriller novels from Thomas Harris. Danish treasure Mads Mikkelsen gave a memorable performance as the titular Hannibal, and it was not hard to see him reuniting with Fuller here in the role of the hitman, or simply named after his unit number 5B. There was a scene in this movie that was surely a throwback to his time as Dr. Hannibal Lecter. I had no qualms with Mikkelsen having his fun as a version of John Wick, but he was too soft-spoken for most of the movie, to a point I started to not care about what his character had to say. I also do not feel for that connection his character had with Aurora, perhaps till the very end. In my review of Scott Derrickson's The Gorge, I highlighted the fact that the authority figure to spew expositions was the type of role Sigourney Weaver will occupy these days, as a cheap way to appease genre movie fans. In Dust Bunny, she had some eye-catching gun-throttling action that was a highlight for me in an otherwise listless affair. I mentioned Das Melchon casting way back in my review of Late Night with the Devil, but he added little to the movie. I thought the limelight was stolen by Sheila Atim in the role of Brenda, the FBI agent instead. As a novel mishmash of genre, I cannot say Dust Bunny worked, but if you like the actors involved, it was definitely not the worst movies they have been cast in. I'm awarding Dust Bunny a 6 out of 10. I only knew about the existence of kombucha within the last 10 years. It felt like an overpriced health drink that really felt like a tiny trap planned to suck money from the contemporary haughty white collars with substantial dispensable income. Over time, I did sample upon the fermented tea made from something known as SCOBY, or symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Seeing that sludge-like biofilmed swimming in the dubious brown liquid surely had inspired Jake Myers to come up with a weird horror feature that delved into the modern office work culture, and the word culture will work in both ways. In the prologue, we saw a young staff member of this company seemingly overworked, even having to attend a performance review in the middle of the night before dropping dead. As the mystery of the death loomed in the background, we were introduced to the protagonist Luke, who was a down-and-out pub musician and his future looked bleak. A former bandmate of his would entice him with a job opportunity which piqued the interest of Luke's girlfriend more than our man himself. After a heated tiff that saw the couple on the break, like Ross and Rachel, Luke wanted to prove to his girlfriend that he could be financially independent, therefore taking up the job offer. The company he was recruited in was that dubious company that sells kombucha with a jar of that probiotic SCOBY goodness on display in the office, and where the tragic death of the employee had happened, resulting in the distraught mother of the deceased suing the company. With zero idea what the company was making and what his job scope was, Luke would stumble through his employment but was suspicious when his colleagues and supervisor Kelsey forced him to drink the kombucha the company had provided. After prolonged coercion and peer pressures, Luke finally succumbed and drank the cultured drink that led to some awful side effects and put him into a trance, but it did improve his productivity, which he could not explain. Luke was starting to relish the attention and praise he received from his superiors before he realized that he was being groomed for some devious plan that was more than selling fermented tea. In the meantime, Luke's girlfriend and the grieving mother of the victim who died working in that company would join forces to uncover the truth, which was never going to be easy. Director Jake Myers based Kombucha off his short film from 2023 and co-wrote the screenplay with Jeff Beckett. The movie was a satire on the corporate machines when most of the time one will wonder what do these big corporations were actually selling, yet they could roll out nice offices and treat their staff like king and queens like those Google offices. One could not help but wonder if these companies were laundering some blood diamond money or were Cambodian scam syndicates in disguise. The satire on the work culture went into a heinous route, like those Chinese companies who adopted the 996 routine of working from 9 to 9 6 days a week, working their staff to death, turning young vibrant people filled with zeal at the start of their job into zombies clocking in and out of work for a paycheck every month. The company here might have poisoned their staff with kombucha or made them addicted in order to slave for the company. The final part with the real owners of the company in this movie was comparable to the sketchy football team owners in Justin Deeping's movie Him. Some reviewers claim that Kombucha was like an episode of The Office directed by David Cronenberg. I will definitely watch that. The premise reminded me so much of an episode of Black Mirror, especially the espionage in The Office felt like something I had seen in USS Callister Into Infinity episode. There were some memorable body horrors on display the filmmakers could conjure up with their limited budget, but otherwise you cannot measure up to a classic Cronenberg or recent movies like The Substance or Together, so please temper your expectations. The performances of an unknown cast was fine, but very typical of an independent feature with working character actors. Claire McFadden, playing the tempestuous Kelsey, was the most eye-catching role. I had fun sitting through this satirical horror comedy and even tolerated the climatic end that made many cheap VHS segments looking like an A24 masterpiece. I welcome more of such interesting features like Kombucha in 2026, and this is a 7.5 out of 10. 1978 was the year KK was born. Yes, the man behind the voice is that old. Please do not judge. It was also the year that FIFA World Cup was hosted and won in Argentina, much to the joy of people who was under the uncouth regime of the military who took over the country from a coup d'etat in 1976. As highlighted in the Wikipedia article about the 1970 World Cup, was that this tournament was marked by flagrant controversy, domestic politics, and alleged interference and match fixing by the Argentine authoritarian military junta government that was using this tournament as an opportunity for nationalistic propaganda and for seeking legitimacy on the world stage. During the months before the start of the World Cup, the junta was intending to dismantle those who were against them and mitigate criticism from the public on their policies. From directing brothers Luciano and Nicholas Onetti, who also came up with the screenplay, went to the film simply titled 1978 with a prologue of a group of sketchy old men playing poker with the World Cup final match between Argentina and Holland playing on the background. It felt like a game of bruised egos on the poker table, but when the camera panned towards a victim, from what we realized to be the sadistic interrogation of this group of men who belonged to the military junta, hunting down their oppositions with the intention of mass genocide. A few of these disgusting cretins began to show their true colors. The old man who looked like Scatman John, called Hugo, was the head honcho and main instigator, although it would reveal that he would be receiving commands from some superior through phone calls. Hugo was unscrupulous and found joy in torturing his captives, even beyond what he was allowed to do. There was that big piece of lard, known as Carancho, who took the opportunity to sexually assault women under their watch, while taunting poor students we would know eventually as innocent club members. There would be one by the name of Miguel who would uphold some form of restraint with how to siphon information from these captives. It was an excruciating watch with how these junta agents torturing these students to reveal their main group leaders with extreme measures, and as audiences, we were hoping to see these captives turn the table against their captors. Lo and behold, something went glaringly wrong for the junta group, as the young people they have caught that evening, leading to the likes of Hugo having that smug look on his face, and Garancho getting more horny for the female party of the captives, being more sinister than how they looked. The twist in the second half of the movie was perhaps the selling point of this Argentine horror, and you have seen the marketing material. Audiences should anticipate a movie more than just a geopolitical torture porn. To be honest, I was more captivated with the movie from the uncouth torturing of prisoners, and seeing how someone like Miguel could slaughter his compatriots in cold blood for their unkempt brutality. The occultist twist to the story, and the gore and horror ensued from the chain of events got a bit over the top. He also felt like the Onettis were not able to translate the horror presentation they had in their mind to be shown on the screen. There were plenty of unnecessary cutaways from scenes, and the strobing lighting and the veering off of the camera from key moments made the watching experience a bit infuriating. There were still some interesting visuals with the parade from hell, although the key scene at the climactic end felt like something we have seen so much in recent years in movies like The First Omen. I also found parallels with the blood-splattering gore scenes in this movie with the sadness from Canadian director Rob Jabaz, although 1978 will never measure up to be a memorable feature like that. The movie was produced by Black Mandela Studio, where Nicholas Onetti is the co-creator. It had an interesting premise and revealed how later generations of Argentinian people had viewed the vile military junta and could not wait to unleash their hatred, even it came in the form of some unspeakable horror. This was not going to be a classic from a renowned Argentine horror director like Damien Rugna, and the end product was a bit disappointing after the promising start. 1978 is a 6.5 out of 10 in my book. I hope you have enjoyed this triple play movie review from me. It's not unlike an Asian Trips feature, to be frank. If you like such longer reviews with more movies in the future, please leave a comment and click the like button. If you are new to the channel, please have a look through my back catalogue of horror movie reviews and hit the subscribe button. Have you ever played Scott Colton's Five Nights at Freddy's or ever watched the movie adaptation? Check out my review for the sequel from director Emma Tammy. Now I am dying to watch a short film about wacky office politics in a company like Scranton Paper Company, written and directed by David Cronenberg. Heck, I would not even mind Brandon or Kathleen Cronenberg.